Next segment in our saddle fitting series. Today we're going to be talking about symmetry in horses. So basically that means whether a horse's shoulders are level with each other, whether they have the same muscle build up on both sides, whether their hindquarters are equal, if they're the same height, their back muscles are the same level. All of those things actually have a massive effect on your saddle fit, and whether you'll actually be sitting straight in the saddle as well. If your saddle's starting to tilt off to one side and you feel like you're collapsing through your hip and you're always trying to step over into one stirrup, it's probably a good indication that things are not straight. So it can be one or two things. It can be your horse. He can be starting to build up and become unlevel. It could be you. You might need the physio. It could actually be in your saddle as well. So in another section we're going to be looking at your saddle symmetry and making sure that's also symmetrical. But today we're going to have a few different video snippets of horses that have asymmetry problems, so they're not square in their shoulders, and what effect it actually has on the saddle fit and the way the saddle moves when you're on foot. So one of the things that's going to be really important for you to check if your horse is symmetrical is to get him onto a solid flat surface, standing square. So that means his 4 feet have to be under the corners of his body. Very important to have a look at that. You might also want to get a mounting block, or you get a crate, so you can have a little look from behind and see whether he's symmetrical. So some of the shapes that we're actually looking at when we're looking at asymmetry is actually the height of the top of the scapula. We'll look at some horses later and we'll actually see that one is slightly higher than the other. Sometimes they can be very big difference between the two of them. We can also see shape difference in the actual muscle over the shoulder and behind the shoulder into the wither pocket. The final thing that we can sometimes see is what's called ledging, and the shoulder blade actually comes away from the horse's body. And you'll actually see one side is bigger outward and one side drops down and it remains close to the body. Now this is actually going to change the way your horse moves, and it's going to change your saddle fit. If we have a big muscle sitting out the back, it's actually going to have more influence on the front of the saddle than on the other side. It can actually push the saddle on a diagonal across the horse's back. That makes you sit crooked, but it also means that you've got uneven pressure on the horse's back muscles. He's actually going to get quite sore on one side, and he'll work in a different way to try and protect him. So there's several things that can actually cause asymmetry in the front end. The horse could have done an injury. He could be crooked in the way he works himself, so he gradually builds up more muscle on one side and weakens the muscles on the other side. He could have high heel, low heel syndrome, where he might have one naturally very upright foot, or even a club foot, a true club foot. It might be that he's been shod in an imbalanced way. So it's very important to come back and have a look at the heel heights. They should be exactly symmetrical from the bulb of the heel down to the ground. We can also double check by coming to the front and looking at the little point of the knee on the inside here and seeing if they're at the same height. If they're massively out, we're probably going to see a difference up in the shoulders as well. So there's a few places you can actually check. Side. Now Bosun's got a bigger near side or left shoulder, and it comes further away from the centre of his spine than his offside shoulder, which drops down in a completely different slope. So Helen, can you reach forward? I know you're keeping him nice and quiet. Can you reach forward to that shoulder on that side, the offside, and just show how that drops straight down? So it goes down that way, and if we have a look at the other side, you'll actually see that that bulges in a round shape. That's perfect. So this is Woody's back from the side. Here's our 15-year-old thoroughbred, and he's an ex-racehorse. Obviously hasn't been racing for quite a long time now, but he's got again a fairly typical looking thoroughbred back shape. It slopes down from his croup down into quite a high sharp wither, and because he's got that little bit of muscle wastage on either side of his wither pockets, that shoulder is even more prominent. Now we're going to pop a jumping saddle on him in a minute and show you just what effect that bulgier shoulder will make on the saddle. As you can see with this horse, especially in a jumping saddle where the flap heads over that bulgy shoulder, this bigger shoulder has more influence on the saddle than the other one. Now, we've only loosely girthed this up. If we actually had that tightly girthed up so the saddle could not be pushed backwards, this shoulder is getting bruised every single time he actually rotates it because we've locked it onto the shoulder. So not only does this point get more pressure than on the other side, but also as the saddle gets pushed over, this panel gets closer to the spine on this side. So he starts to become more sore as the edges of the panel touches the edges of his vertebra on this side. And he becomes tighter in the back and more sore in the back in one direction than the other. Normally these horses, you'll actually see them have more difficulty picking up one cantilever, or when they land over a jump, they'll always pick up a particular lead to try and avoid this bulgy shoulder being pressed by the front of the saddle. In dressage saddles it does move as well, and in horses that are not as got taller wither, they're actually flatter and rounder, the saddle moves over even more, and the rider will actually start to sit crooked as well. Okay, so now we've popped some orange dots, one in the centre of the cantle and one on his croup. It helps you see a little bit better just what's happening to your saddle in relationship to your horse's back. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk the horse forward. Hang on 2 seconds, Ross. And you should actually see in a saddle that's fitting correctly, the dot go on the saddle go to the left, to the centre and to the right evenly. What we normally see in a horse, either with a bulgy shoulder or with a croup tilt, you'll see it go to one direction more than to the other direction. Off you go, Ross, take him for a walk. Things we can actually do to try and help horses with asymmetry. One of the things that we use is a simple half pad that has removable pads on the inside. We can cut back the pad behind that bulgy shoulder, but we can also support the offside lower shoulder as well with the shim in the front. But it really is a matter for your saddler to do this, or your saddle fitter to have a look at this, because each horse is an individual. But it's nice to know there are actually things that you can do to try and help these horses, and hopefully you'll be looking at their feet shape, you'll be getting a body worker to try and work out the tightness in his muscles, and using your saddle fitter